We are live from San Antonio, Texas, just a stone's throw away from the Alamo Dome. We cannot see it in the background, but we're a stone's throw away from the Alamo Dome, just 10 minutes away from AT&T Center. And man, we wish we were joining with much better celebration, much better cause for celebration. And unfortunately, that will not be the case. Houston, fell to Villanova in the Elite Eight. They final score they lost 50-44. Really an abysmal shooting night for the Houston Cougars. But Aqib, thank you for joining us. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, you could find me on. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, you could find me at Aqib and Gazi on Instagram and Twitter.
And Aqib, where can people when we take not where can people find you when we think about this game? Obviously, the story of the game, shooting. Houston
Yeah.
struggles to score tremendously from the field, and Tyler Edwards struggled. The whole team struggled. They finished 1 for 20 on threes.
Yeah.
What were your kind of takeaways from that game and a low scoring game? If you would have said that Houston held Villanova to just 50 points at the beginning of the game, at the
Yeah.
beginning of the matchup, I think a lot of people would have taken.
Yeah. I mean, defensively, Houston they did their job. It was just a lot of what Villanova was doing on defense to kind of shut Houston down. But I really thought Houston struggled to get into their sets, and they really didn't. It was a lot of ISO ball when I noticed. When they would pass the ball around the perimeter, they couldn't really. They tried getting inside a couple of times. I noticed in the second half, guys like Josh Carlton, Fabian White, very non-impactful in the game. They didn't, for a lot of the game, they didn't play actually in the second half for whatever reason. Sampson maybe wanted some guys that would, defend better on the perimeter, which that was another struggle that they had against this Villanova team.
Yeah, for sure. And when you think about this season, honestly, it played out a lot like the season in total because Houston really Villanova built their early lead early in the first half, and Houston was playing catch up the entire time. It was actually a wire to wire victory for Villanova. And, I mean, Houston was never out of it. They were always an arm's length reach, and they made that run late in the second half where they cut it to two. It was 42-40, and it seemed like Houston had a chance to be able to overtake it. And let me tell you, for those that did go to AT&T Center, um, the, the the fans there, they were ready to explode, and it just never could explode. But Akib, in terms of just the season overall, because after Marcus Sasser got injured, really that's when the expectations changed for this team, and some people considered it. Honestly, no, not many of them had them getting to this point, the Elite Eight. They were just one game away from catching up what the Final Four team did last year, and those were teams with Quentin Grimes, Justin Gorham, Dejan Jarreau, and they were. I mean, really, there were a couple of made baskets away from getting back to the Final Four. What can you say about this season overall?
Couple of baskets, couple of free throws away. So many of the Houston Cougars shots rimmed in and out. A lot of those jump shots, especially in the second half. And I noticed that. Um, and then the free throws was also another thing. Kyler Edwards missed a pair early in the second half. So did so as well as a couple of other guys who missed free throws on the team. So it wasn't their night offensively for sure, but I just felt like a lot of it was credited to Villanova putting the pressure on Houston's perimeter players. So it just really seemed like whatever Villanova was doing, the scouting report, they made sure that guys like Kyler Edwards could not get going. They would anytime some of those guys would like Kyler Edwards would drive to the basket, um, they were not getting any clean looks. Same thing um, with Tajay Moore as well. He anytime he went to the basket, whenever he seemed like our most efficient scorer tonight, but a lot of those shots were very tough shots that he made, and that was the only thing to me that really kept them in. And some of our bigs that caught the ball um, near the rim were able to get the ball in the hoop. But other than that, everything else was tough for Houston, and it didn't seem like the same team that we were used to seeing over this tournament.
Yeah, when we talked about this matchup after they beat Arizona in that elite game on Thursday, one of the things we mentioned for Houston, an advantage they would have been the size. Villanova, their tallest player was 6'9", and early on it just seemed like Houston couldn't take advantage of that. They tried to feed Fabian White, they tried to feed Josh Johnson. Now, granted, I know a lot of UH fans are going to talk about the officiating because that. Let me tell you, there were a lot of questionable calls, especially down low in the post with Josh Carlton. He was called for a couple of offensive fouls. To be quite frank, they could have gone either way, and really they probably won. But what you see in that matchup in terms of Houston's bigs, it didn't really seem like they were able to establish either Josh Carlton or Fabian.
So, so basically, I mean, I was on in the second half. I was on the opposing end, where the Villanova players were on offense, and I would say, some of those calls were very, I wouldn't say questionable. They were very ticky tacky calls, um, but from my vantage point, they were fouls, to Villanova's credit. So I'm not going to take away anything from them. Definitely, it wasn't really being called the same way on both ends, but some of the calls made against Houston, they were still, I would say they're fouls, even though I have a bias. I would still, admittedly say that those were calls. Now, on the matchup end, any, I felt like Houston, the post players like Fabian White, Josh Carlton couldn't really even, when they would get the ball inside, the Villanova players did a very good job of fronting um, Fabian and Josh Carlton, not giving them any looks. And those guys are strong. When you're watching them, you're almost on the floor, Andy, and you could see they're very stocky. They have a lot of muscle mass on them, and versus Fabian White, Josh Carlton, they're tall, in terms of like their length, but they're not the most swole guys you could say. And then defensively, it just seemed like they were trying to bring the UH bigs out, into the perimeter, out on an island, and that made a big difference. And they abused those mismatches.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually a great point that Dayon brought up while we were watching the game. We were both sitting courtside, and for the Villanova players, even though, like you said, they weren't necessarily tall in terms of size, when it came to their width, they were really pretty well built, and they did a good job of building a walk to contain Josh Hart, contain Fabian White. And I think the other thing that was kind of interesting and really gave Houston a lot of problems was how agile they were, because especially when it was Josh Carlton and at times Fabian White, even Jaywan Roberts, a couple of times they were fighting on pump fakes. They were jumping a lot in the air, and it was really difficult for uh, even Josh Carlton to stay on the floor because um, it never really seemed like he had a good matchup where Houston could keep him on the floor. And on the offensive end, the Cougars just weren't able to get him the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt like that's probably one of the main reasons that um, Coach Sampson did not play Josh Carlton as much in the second half as maybe Houston fans would be used to seeing him play. I think I wouldn't say a mistake because coaches, they have their reasons for different things, but they put in Jaywan Roberts, to guard some of the perimeter players, and credit to Villanova, they were really abusing that mismatch, and they're I think there was the one play specifically. This was, to me, was like almost a game changer where, and you probably would agree, was late in the second half. We made a big run. It was 40-42, I believe, and then Colin Gillespie, yeah, he hit a tough bucket, I think, on the right wing. It was a mid-range shot. I believe Jaywan Roberts was maybe guarding him. I can't recall, but that was kind of what they were doing. That was their game plan. We're gonna abuse the mismatches. We're gonna get Jaywan Roberts out. Reggie Chaney also, they brought him out as well, out on the perimeter, and I think that's what really caused Houston problems because all those guys, they're almost like Draymond Green type players where they're well built. They all can put the ball on the floor. They all have a decent, respectable jumper to where you can't just let them shoot. And Houston players, they were butting on the pump fake, and we had talked about this in the last show that Villanova was going to shoot a lot of, make a lot of pump fakes, and that's part of their game plan.
And on that note, we'd like to bring in Justin Barbosa on the yet to be sponsored hotline. By the way, give credits to the Dakota East House. We are live at location. We are at a local bar and restaurant grill, just 10 minutes outside from the AT&T Center. They were graceful enough to allow us to host the show and broadcast this from their location. And Justin Barbosa joining us also in San Antonio, but from an undisclosed location. Justin, welcome to the show, Justin. How you doing?
Man, doing good. Just sad about the loss, but it was an incredible season.
Yeah, Justin. We're gonna take turns sharing the screen here because first world problems. But Justin, just in terms of you were there, and we're gonna give you the solo screen right now. You were there at the game. It always seemed, and this was a big point that a lot of fans have made. It seemed like the crowd that was there, the Houston crowd that was there, uh, they were just waiting for that one run. They would either tie the game or take over the game, where Houston took the lead, um, and it just never happened. And it always seemed like they were waiting for explode. Now, the closest that they ever got was when they cut it to 42-40. Even then, it always seemed like Villanova had a timely basket, a timely answer. You were there. Did you feel that in terms of the crowd as well, and how was the atmosphere?
Absolutely. I mean, it just seemed like every time the Cougars got within six or four, I mean, Villanova just answered with another run. But yeah, once we got to two, that was the loudest the arena was that game. I mean, Houston just basically took over that arena. I'd probably compare it to when it was the Oklahoma game in 2016 for football when the Houston fans took over NRG Stadium. But yeah, they just couldn't get that big basket to really get that crowd really going the rest of the game. But I mean, nonetheless, it was still a fun atmosphere. When it did get loud, it was pretty fun, especially when Tazi Moore to hit that shot to make it within 42 to 40.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, of course, the headlines are going to be the 1 for 20 from the field for Houston. What did you feel was kind of the difference for the Cougars in this game?
Yeah, just 3 point shooting and unable to hit free throws. I think we missed from maybe six or seven, and Villanova, I mean, hit every single one. I mean, can't got to give them credit for that.
Right, for sure. And in terms of the season that they had, we were talking about how, once Marcus Sasser went down, really the expectations for this team changed. I mean, to be quite frank, the Christmas Eve is when the news broke that Marcus Sasser was going to be out for the season with that fractured in his toe. If people would have said then and there that this Houston team would have gotten to the Elite Eight, I'm pretty sure that every single Houston fan would have taken it 10 out of 10. Now, albeit it is disappointing, and I think Kelvin Sampson after the game talked about how it was disappointing for Houston in terms of the loss, but he said that was the only thing that he was disappointed about. And obviously, of course, giving kudos to the good season that Houston had. I'm sure you can talk a little bit about the season as a whole and what Houston was able to accomplish, especially after, I mean, they were missing their best player for all of conference play and through this run.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when Sasser and Tremont Mark went down, I mean, I thought like, can we even still win the conference and barely squeak into the tournament? But after all that, we still went on to win the conference, won the conference tournament, and then just to go on to the Elite Eight. I mean, it's just an incredible season. We had to change our philosophy on offense, and we didn't really have a shot creator all season. Had to mainly rely on just team ball, passing the ball around and driving inside the basket, making timely threes. But that was really the difference tonight. Was where we really missed Marcus Sasser and his shot creation, and Tremont Marcus an extra scorer and his playmaking ability. And it was just unfortunate it came tonight in the Elite Eight, but I mean, just got to give Kelvin Sampson credit for all this season. He did an incredible job, and hope he wins Coach of the Year, votes. And I think he really deserves it.
For sure. And Justin, I'm gonna put you out in the studio real quick, and Aqib, I'll bring you back in terms of um, what Justin just touched on right there, the coaching job that Calvin Sampson did this season. Um, Honestly, best certainly what he does. His resume has been out there that he, especially for this year, Coach of the Year. We know his accolades. throughout his career, and really what he's been able to establish in Houston. Coming up next season, they're going to come with a loaded recruiting class. They're going to have 5-star Jarris Walker. They're going to have 4-star Terrence Arsenal. Emmanuel Sharp is already on the team, and let me tell you, this is a really good experience for him to be able to watch this run in the Elite Eight. But then also he's already training with Ala Bishop, and the stuff that he's put him through after his injury, the gruesome leg injury that he suffered in high school. Going forward, what can you say first about the coaching job that Kelvin Sampson did? And two, I mean, now next year's team is going to have a lot of expectations, especially after the run that they made this.
Yeah, can you hear me, Andy? Okay, all right, cool. We had some technical difficulties.
It's a
Anyways,
live
yeah,
show.
it's a live show. Yeah, this is a first. We're making history out here. Yeah, so basically, um, what the job that Kelvin Sampson has done has been above and beyond. I remember this was, I believe, 2015, if I'm correct. This is my sophomore year in college. I remember eating on campus at the student center where there's Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, all that, and someone comes up to us, me and a couple other friends, and it was Coach Sampson at the time, urging us to go to the game. And at that time, it wasn't really the cool thing to go to a UH basketball game, just because of their recent history of not winning very many basketball games. Now, in the span of 2-3 years, they did have a game where they had beaten University of Texas at Austin, UT Austin, that was one of the highlights of my early college career. That was probably the pinnacle of UH's up until that point of the basketball program. Which after that they had fired that coach. They brought in Coach Sampson, and he really urged a lot of us to go to those games. We did, of course, and we saw just right after picking up guys like Galen Robinson, Rob Gray, Damian Dotson, who I thought the last year that Damian Dotson was with the Coogs, the Coogs should have made the NCAA tournament. Unfortunately, they didn't. But we saw what Coach Sampson was building, and from then on, it's just everything has skyrocketed. The program, he's been doing the same exact things as a leader of this program. Nothing has changed since he came in, except the fact that they have been getting better recruits, better transfers. Um, Players are more they have bought fully into the program, and all credit to Kevin Sampson. I would have never imagined or thought that in 2015 or so, when he was begging students almost to come, that the program would be where it's at. It's almost a dynasty right now. Maybe we are getting those top 100 recruits. I believe we're getting 3 top 100 players or so next season. That's going to help tremendously. If we have Jamal Shed come back, which he most likely will, that's just gonna be another year under his belt to where he can become even a better player. So just going focus on Kelvin Sampson, the job he's done, it's just above and beyond. And to me, he's the best coach in America.
Yeah, and when he was leading up to this NCAA tournament, every time, especially the last 3 seasons that I've been fortunate enough to be able to cover the team, he always brings it up. And one of the big things with Kelvin Sampson is never forget where you came from. That's something that he always likes to say. And going back, like you mentioned, to the 2014, 2015, we had Paige and Galen Robinson on our show last week when they advanced to the Sweet 16. Galen Robinson talked about it, how whenever he went to school, and I believe Fabian White talked about it too during his post games. Whenever they were first joined the program, it wasn't necessarily the cool thing to be able to be on the team. Like you said, they were literally going out trying to recruit fans to pack in Hofheinz Pavilion into what is now turned into Fertitta Center. And now Fabian White talked about it. You literally can't walk around campus without someone wearing men's basketball gear. Now Jordan Brand helps a little bit. We'll give them credit. But Justin, we're going to bring you in, and can you touch on, you are an alumni also, so you've seen that progress, and to get from where that program was then to now, what can you add to that statement?
Yeah, I mean, just seeing the clips of Kelvin Sampson bringing fans, like begging for fans to go to Hofheinz Pavilion back then, and now almost on the nightly at Fertitta Center, getting mainly sellouts each night, and the culture is just there. I mean, it's just incredible from the very beginning, from back then to now, and then now this past weekend, we're selling out, bringing fans to an NBA arena, basically almost nearly selling it out. It's just crazy how far what Sampson's done to this program to make it a perennial Final Four team each year, and that's the goal for now on. National title, especially with next year. We got the best recruiting class in probably UH history coming in. You got Jarris Walker, you got Terrence Arnault, hopefully Marcus Sasser coming back, and absolutely Tremont Mark. It's just incredible what Kelvin Sampson has built. All started with as he says, his best recruit ever was Galen Robinson, helping really build that program to what it is now.
For sure, Justin, and as we come back, yeah, that's certainly that. When you talk about Galen Robinson and that crew, every time Calvin Sampson says Wes Van Vleck, Armani Brooks, those Corey Davis, those were the group. They really put Houston on the map, and now it's going to be tough for U of H fans. I'm sure those of you that are joining us in the comments and the chats, watching us, you guys can comment on how big and how hard it's going to be to see Fabian White no longer be with the program and graduate. And Kelvin Sampson talked about it in the post game leading up to during the NCAA tournament run. And Aqib, I'll let you talk about it, but I'm sure this team is going to look completely different. It's just going to feel different now that they don't have Fabian White Jr. on the helm.
Yeah. I totally agree. The feeling is going to be very different. Just Fabian White, he spent 5 years with the Houston Cougars. He obviously had that 1 year where he was injured. But at the same time, yeah, I'm sure Kelvin Sampson and a lot of the team is going to be emotional. I'm almost like emotional thinking about him, leaving this program and what he meant. He's obviously the most winningest player in Houston Cougar history, and that's probably one of his biggest accolades with the team, and as well as him developing that 3-point jump shot as well. That was big for his development. Moving forward in the pro level of hoops. So yeah, definitely what Fabian. I feel like every year we keep saying this about a certain group of seniors or a certain class of players, but in my opinion, Fabian White is a guy that is irreplaceable. You obviously had guys in the past like Rob Gray, Galen Robinson, and then last year Quentin Grimes. The year before that, Armani Brooks. Those guys are all irreplaceable, but I think Fabian White, in a way, just means so much more to the program because of he went through the first year. His first year was in an NCAA tournament, beating a team and making it into the round of 32 before they got knocked off, and then progressing. And we saw slowly how he progressed as a player, how the program progressed as a unit as well. Last year making the Final Four, this year very close, Elite Eight, only losing by a couple of points to Villanova. The game, it was a 6-point game, but the game, trust me, it was way closer than some would think. So yeah, I mean, he means a lot to this program.
And on that note, we're gonna share a video from Dayon Dunlap, who is still at AT&T Center. He went with us. He was our on-field reporter to the post-game conference with Kelvin Sampson, and we'll share a screen in a bit. But here's Dayon Dunlap and his video on Kelvin Sampson.
Well, the only thing I'll tell you, we'll be good again. We've got good young players. Look at Jamal Shedd. He's got 3 more years. Jawan Roberts might have been our best big today for sure. He battled in there. So we've got good players coming back. We've got good players coming in. The transfer portal will be something that we'll be active in. So Cougar basketball is here to stay, man. Beating Arizona, it took a lot out of us. It's not easy to do what we did for 40 minutes and then what 38 hours later, come back and have to play a team like that, Villanova. But we felt like we could win. And looking back at the game now, it's just I've compartmentalized it here since the game's over. We had our opportunities. So many good looks, but our kids' fault. We got down 21-10. Next thing you know, it's 42-40. So, but those were two tough, hard-nosed teams. Not a lot of teams are going to look good offensively against us, and not a lot of teams are going to look great offensively against them.
Once again, that was UH head coach Kelvin Sampson. They on Dunlap for us on the field reporting after the game. Justin, we're going to toss it over to you right now because I want to get your thoughts on those comments right there and what Kelvin Sampson said. He went into detail of the players that they're going to have coming back. Obviously, of course, we've mentioned the upcoming recruiting class, but they're going to have Jamal Shed back. Tremont Mark is going to come back after the injury that he suffered. So, Justin, what are your thoughts on those comments by Kelvin Sampson and how positive he was in terms of the outlook for next season?
Yeah, it's going to be very positive, especially with Tremont Mark coming back. He got a second playmaker on the floor with Jamal Shed, especially when one of those guys goes to the bench, so you have a playmaker on the floor at all times. But yeah, and on that comment about the shots wouldn't fall, yeah, I mean, that's just the kind of night it was, and a night where we miss, Marcus Sasser and his shot creation. But yeah, especially in those final, 3-4 minutes of the game, Cougars got some good open looks, at least cut it down from 3, maybe 2, and they just couldn't fall. I mean, it's just one of those nights where shots look good. I had a couple of shots I would go, 3/4 down the rim, and it would come out. But yeah, I mean, just disappointing on a shooting night, but those nights going to happen. Just unfortunate it was tonight, but just a great outlook on next year, with the recruiting class, players coming in, Tremont Martin coming back, hopefully with Sasser. I see the Cougars coming back right where they are this year and hopefully better. And I was talking about it earlier about taking over an NBA stadium. They have a chance to hopefully maybe fill up NRG Stadium next year with the Final Four in Houston.
Yeah, Justin, we like your thinking. That's true. Justin just mentioned that next year's Final Four will be at NRG Stadium in Houston. Aqib, before I toss it over to you, Justin, you made a great point in terms of the really the outlook that Kelvin Sampson has had, and Aqib, I'll let you touch on it. I'll let you talk on it as well, but especially the rally that Houston made. I think they got down 11. I want to say it was 40-29 late in that second half. And I remember when it got down double digits, I told them, that dagger, that might do it. And Houston rallied back and they cut it to 42-40. They were right there. They were within striking distance. And at the end of the day, they just really could not get over the hump. And what I was going to say is, the old saying when it comes, and it's much more for the NBA, but at the end of the day, basketball is a maker's sport. And at the end of the day, Houston just could not buy a basket, especially when it came to a three-pointer. Okay, but first on Kelvin's comments and just overall, the positive outlook that he has on the team coming next year, because he did list out Jamal Smith coming back, Jamal Mark coming back. We're unsure about Marcus Sasser. He could come back. It'll be interesting to see how his offseason goes, but that's something to watch. And we've already touched on the recruiting side.
Yeah, Kelvin Sampson, he touched on it at a post game. Deion Dunlap, who had the scoop on that, the video that we just played. He said we're gonna be back. He also said we're gonna be back, and I totally trust Kelvin Sampson as a leader of this program. And if you look at where we made it, as a group this year, Elite Eight. Many of us thought once we lost Marcus Sasser, once we lost Tremont Mark, we thought, hey, even making a tournament would be impressive. And it just what they did, that's why I have no disappointment in how they even played today. They didn't play their best basketball, obviously, but there was nothing to be disappointed. This is Villanova, almost a blue blood program. They were able to, have their way against Houston, obviously. Could Houston have played better? Of course they could have. But I felt like a lot of they just didn't. I would have been more upset had we had open shots and had we missed those than the way they were playing today, because it was just whatever credit to Villanova, whatever they could, they didn't give us an easy basket at all. I think in the second half there were a few open buckets when Houston made that. I believe it was 11-2 run because they were down 40-29. Even then, I was believing in the team, thinking anytime we could go on a run because that's what Houston does. They go on runs, and we spoke about this earlier in the postseason that the statistics show that Houston is one of the best teams at making runs and holding their opponents, stopping opponents' runs as well. And yeah, like Kelvin Sampson, like you said, this team's they're gonna be back. They're gonna have better recruits. They're definitely gonna bring Jamal Shed from all indications. And then maybe even Sasser. We don't know. I'm sure Sasser's gonna test out the draft. He's gonna be a highly sought out player, most likely. But in my opinion, him being a junior right now, it probably would be in his best personal interest to test it out, to maybe go for the draft because he was going to be a high second round draft pick. Looking at a lot of these mock drafts earlier in the season when he was balling out, almost averaging 20 points a game. So yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes, but very positive outlook for this team on the program.
Justin, we're tossing it over to you because I want to get your thoughts. In your opinion, do you feel that Marcus Sasser should come back? And now this is try your best to be unbiased in terms of yes, he should be back because it's best for the University of Houston, of course. But if you were in Marcus Sasser's shoes, what do you feel would be best for him? Would returning for a third season, especially under the circumstances? Because Kelvin Sampson mentioned it, and Justin, we're gonna put it back to us because I'm speaking too much. But Kelvin Sampson mentioned it. That the year that Marcus Sasser was having, I mean, he was on pace. Quentin Grimes had a good year for Houston last season, and Marcus Sasser was on pace to surpass that, especially when it comes to three-pointers made. I think he had gotten into the 40s just during non-conference play, and it took a while before anyone else in the American Athletic Conference surpassed that. So he was on his way to put together a good season. Now that injury leaves a bitter taste in the mouth, and it certainly leaves a big what if for this Houston team that's going to be that's always going to be interesting. But I think he's going to have a tough decision. It might not necessarily be as clear cut as it may be. And Justin, as we toss it over to you, what say you? What do you think?
I think I remember in one of our podcasts earlier in the year, I think it's at the beginning of the season, I think Sasser was projected as a second round pick, probably a late second rounder, but I think he should come back and that'll help raise the stock for sure. But if I was in the shoes, I'd definitely say, run it back. I mean, we're this close to the championship, without him this season. And with the team coming in with the team next season and the recruits coming in, Tremont Mark, Jamal Shed sharing the floor, I would say, definitely come back. It would definitely propel this team next season to have him back for sure. I mean, especially with this shooting, missing some games this year, and especially, tonight, just to have him, on the floor, I mean, it would be electric.
I agree, and it'll be a touch of thing. See Joe Mendes, what he said. He says, if Sasser comes back, he would be a first-round draft pick. To be quite honest, I think he could build up a resume, honestly, barring health, and he can put together a full season. I think he'd be able to become a lottery pick, borderline lottery pick, around the mid-first round pick. I think if he comes back, has a full season, that could be his ceiling. Now, I will say this: I think he's at a point where he's good enough to play professionally, regardless. Now, will that be, if he were to enter in the NBA draft this year, would that be a second round pick, or could that be possibly having to go through the G League route or receive route? Because I think he certainly has the time to be a first round. It'll be interesting to see what scouts think of him and also what teams think of it, because he has the NBA skills. He has the three-point shot. He has the ability to create off the dribble when he needs to. And obviously, of course, his defense is at a high level. Aqib, what say you? What do you think if he were to declare the draft, where can Marcus Sasser go? And do you think that he could get up to that mid-first round draft pick scenario if he were to come back for a third season with you?
Yeah, I know. I don't disagree with you much. I probably have never disagreed with you, but I think this is my opinion. You can take it for what it is, but I don't think it improves his draft stock, by much if he stays for another year. Just following the NBA for so long, and especially going through a team like Houston, the Houston Rockets, how they have their issues right now, and how they're in a lottery position. Some would say probably they're on track to be a top four pick this year. Um, but to get to back to the point, NBA teams they like youth more, and the fact that he has really only played 2.5 seasons in college, I think that um, I would say that attracts a lot of NBA teams. You know, less time under his miles in terms of, he can still be developed. Because guys can be developed more when they're a pro versus in college. They got to go through school. There's a lot of hectic traveling. The schedules are not the best, with college basketball. So I will respectfully disagree, Andy, with that. I don't think it'll. Right now, he would have been a second rounder had he finished out the season. I would say a high second rounder at that, maybe a low first round pick. But I don't think that Sasser staying an extra year is going to help him professionally, at the next level. If he stays another year, maybe it'll improve his draft stock by a little bit more, but he's gonna be another year older. NBA teams, for whatever reason, I feel like teams should look at more experienced players, but for whatever reason, the NBA is more attracted to youth and more attracted to potential. So I don't think Marcus Sasser, him staying an extra year, is going to tremendously improve his draft stock. However, it would be nice if he ran it back with the Houston Cougars. He would definitely be able to do something special with UH.
Justin, we're gonna toss it over to you again. Would you agree? And Aqib's assessment, by the way, you had a great point, Aqib. I completely I respect your opinion, and I can see that, especially in terms of, like you mentioned, when it comes to the NBA, youth is key and potential. That's one of the reasons why Chet Holmgren is projected to, for some instances, maybe even be a number one overall pick. Not necessarily what he is now, but what he can be with his wingspan, with his length, and really with his ability to react on defense and the potential he's shown in flashes. Justin, we're going to toss it over to you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I can agree with that, especially if he performs well, for the draft workouts, and he can see some stock getting drafted or signing with a team, and absolutely he'll probably definitely go to the NBA. But just my opinion. I would love to see him back, try to make another run with this team coming in next year. I mean, it would definitely help spreading the floor, 3-point shooting. But if he goes, he goes, and that'll be good for him.
For sure. And as we begin to wind things down, and there's going to be a question for around the panel, and Justin, I'll let you go first. But when you think about the 21-22 Houston season, if you could use just one word, what would it be best to describe? And for those listening, if he came in with the fire, sorry, this we got to put this up because this might also be a open debate. Marcus Sasser greater than Quentin Grimes. Hey, Effie, I think certainly with the season that he was having and he potentially could have had, Marcus Sasser was very well on his case to have a much better season than not much better, but he was on pace to have a better season than Quentin Grimes did last year. And obviously, of course, Quentin Grimes ended up going in the first round, 25th to the Clippers, which was then traded to the Knicks. But Justin, back to the round table for everyone, and Justin, I'll let you go first. What is one word that would best summarize the season for Houston? And just what they were able to accomplish.
Man, trying to think of a word for that, but just incredible, man. I mean, it's just been an incredible season. Losing both Sasser and Mark beginning of the year, and just be able to do what they do, what Sampson has done this season. I didn't think, I thought they would barely scratch the tournament, even, maybe win the conference, but to go all the way to the Elite Eight, just incredible.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel if I were to pick a word, it would be resilient. I think resilience would be the perfect word to encapsulate with U of H, just in terms of everything they were able to overcome. Obviously, I mean, we keep going back to the story of the season as they lost Marcus Sasser. They lost Tremont Mark, but to be quite frank, Tremont Mark was never 100% from the get go. It was something that he was being bothered with that shoulder injury from the start, and then he had other injuries as the season progressed, and then they had to shut him down. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes back. Um, Hopefully healthy and ready to go for his third year at U of H. But that's the word I would choose. And they showed it even in this game against Villanova. One with the run when Villanova was able to go up double digits and to cut it to two. But even then, the very end, when it was clear that Villanova was going to win, Houston forced the turnover. They forced Villanova on the full court press to turn the ball over. They got another shot. They got a three from Kyler. He missed. They got the offensive rebound, kicked it back out to Tajay, and he got the last shot. And that's how the season ended for Houston. And I think that's why resilience is the perfect word. Aqib, what say you?
Something, yeah, I was gonna say perseverance. So something very similar to resilience. They just even when so when they had lost, so just to recap just a little bit, they had lost Marcus Sasser, they lost Tremont Mark almost within the same day or two, I believe. Um, and then even after that, they started American Conference play. They won. They went on a tremendous run. I believe it was a 9-game win streak, and then they lost a couple of games within a span of a week or two. They had lost to SMU. They also had lost twice to Memphis. So, and then after all that, they go through the American Conference tournament. I think they win almost every game by double digits, if I'm not mistaken. They beat Memphis pretty decisively in the finals, who they had lost to twice. So that's where the perseverance kicks in. And then they go through the NCAA tournament, and they they easily beat UAB. I would say they take down Illinois pretty handily, and then they beat after that, after they had played another, they played Arizona, who are the Pac-12 champs. And then they go through this, they play Villanova, and even today, you saw the perseverance. You saw when they were down 40-29, they made an 11-2 run, and at that point, I almost thought Cougar fans should have believed that, and I wouldn't have blamed them if they believed that UH was gonna win that game because the momentum was shifting in their favor. But yeah, that's all I would say is perseverance.
I would agree, and I think this is a good point brought up by FP. I think Marcus Sasser, his injury really allowed Jamal Shed to grow and honestly become that NBA potential point guard at how high of a level he's able to play, and just being able to watch him up close in this game, you could tell. There were a couple passes where I believe it was Josh Carlton or Jawan Roberts, where he looked off the Villanova defender. Whichever the big was, I can't remember who exactly it was. They were wide open in the paint, but he made sure that he would set up a perfect pass where they'd just be able to go up and dunk it by literally looking the defender away and throwing a bullet pass to the big, which led to easy slam. He did a good job being able to set up the bigs a couple of times in this game. But on that note, for the final time this season, we will have via the yet to be sponsored hotline. Hopefully, we'll get it. By the way, we thank you everyone for joining us that is viewing. We apologize if the background noise is too much, but we are live. We are in San Antonio, and we're trying to make this as big as it can go. So, via the yet to be sponsored hotline, one more time, Chris Gardner of the Houston Round Ball Review. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Good job with the noise. A note for the future. This is all a learning experience in these last, 5, 6 shows. Just go with, got to get some headphones, noise canceling headphones for the future. Get a sponsor for that too. These headphones are brought to you by Company X, but that's fine. Learning experience. That's what this is all about. Kudos to the team. you know, as Coach Sampson said after the game in the press conference, if you would have told him that you would hold Villanova to 28% shooting, 23% shooting from the three, and lose, he would not have believed you. I don't believe anybody would have thought that Houston would lose a game like that when Villanova shoots less than 30%. But that's what happened. The Coogs just could not make a three-pointer. They made 1 out of 23s today. Just one of those days. That's a part of the March Madness. He's one and done. You have one bad game shooting, and your season can end. Whereas, you know, if you got a playoff, you get another chance tomorrow. But that's not the case in the tournament. So I think I'm going to answer Fred Wright's question here. All signs point to Kyler Edwards leaving because he was part of the graduation ceremony. So, yeah, I think Kyler's not coming back. That's why Reggie Chaney was not part of the ceremony because he is expected back with the team. And now the team, fans, supporters, wait for transfer portal news, and there will be some coming. And I'll just leave it at that.
That right there, Chris, is what we call a tease. And I don't know what scoop you got, Chris, but UH fans, like Chris said, you guys should be on standby because, going along the transfers, that's a big, honestly, recruiting tool now that top teams of the nation have to utilize. And we saw what Houston was able to do in the transfer portal this year. They brought Tajay Moore, they brought Josh Carlton, they brought Kyler Edwards. All three players were key throughout this run, and we mentioned it throughout. What really made this team gave them that extra oomph to be able to honestly be a national championship contender was Kyler Edwards and the shot making. We saw it throughout the tournament from the second round game in the American Athletic Conference tournament, throughout the NCAA tournament, until this game. He was making multiple threes a game, and then this game. He was unable to do that, and Houston suffered, especially offensively. They didn't have that extra layer, and we saw them struggle. And I think that was key. But for the whole season, you saw guys Tajay Moore, Kyler Edwards, Josh Carlton, not only all play big roles, but embrace the culture, and that's key right there. Aqib, I'll toss it over to you if there's anything you'd like to add in terms of how big the transfer were for this season and going forward. Like Chris said, how key it's going to be for Houston next season because we know the recruiting class, but that you can't have a young team like even if they're high all 5 stars and expect to go on a deep run because they're young and they have to go through the growing pains. You need to have some veteran leadership to be able to guide that side.
Yeah, and I agree. And then Kelvin Sampson touched up on this actually. I believe this was in the press conference, the pre-press conference to the Elite Eight. He had mentioned that we don't recruit guys like the top teams, like Villanova, like Duke, like North Carolina. We don't recruit guys like that. He said they have a whole. Coach Sampson has a whole different line of thinking when it comes to recruiting, and as evident as we saw from this team, 3 out of 5 of our current starters, they were all from the transfer portal. Josh Carlton, Tajay Moore, and of course Kyler Edwards. And we saw how big of an impact Kyler Edwards made. Up until this game, he was averaging, I believe, 19.6 or some close to 20 points a game he had been averaging. So that shows you, and this is speaking to any transfers that are listening to this live show right now. You will, if you work hard enough, you will get a chance. Even coming in you as a senior, maybe, or even a 50th senior like Josh Carlton, you will get the opportunity that Kelvin Sampson provides if you play hard. If you obviously hit big shots, play defense first and foremost. We saw Ramon Walker, who was just a freshman, play so many minutes just because of the hustle. Now, he wasn't hit. I think he only shoots about 30-something% from the field, but that doesn't matter to Coach Sampson. As long as you dive for balls, you take charges, you play defense to the best of your ability, you're going to play games, and it doesn't matter whether you're a freshman or a fifth year transfer senior. You're going to get that shining moment with the Houston Cougars.
Aqib, you mentioned one shining moment, or you mentioned one shining moment. That's going to be interesting to see how Houston's featured. But obviously, of course, Chris, you were part of the Zoom calls with Kelvin Sampson's post-game availability. What stood out from Kelvin Sampson and what he told reporters post-game?
His closing comment was the most telling, because he also credited the fans for their support. And he said, Coach Sampson said that the growth in the fan support from 2014 replicates the growth of the basketball program. So because when Coach Sampson first arrived, there was not a lot of fan support. But now look at it. You had so many Cougar fans inside AT&T Center in San Antonio, made the trip, made the drive 200 miles to go support the Cougs. So that's a great foundation. That's a great sign of support. And the last thing he said, he thanked the fans for their support. He thanked everyone who's been with the team thick and thin. And he said, we will be back. And I have no doubt about that. The Cougs will be back.
Now, Chris, we know we've talked about the recruiting class next season. You mentioned a possibility about transfers, the returning players coming back with Jamal, Taman. A couple questions for you. One, and I think it's going to be fair to say, next year's team coming in, they're certainly going to be more talented, at least when you look at stars and accomplishments, what they've already done, than this team. And I'll let you correct me if you think otherwise. That doesn't mean that they're going to get to the Elite Eight again or the Final Four. But two, and what you touched on with the people that were here, I think it's what Kelvin Sampson said before. I believe it was leading up to the Elite Eight, but just what he's been able to build in Houston is, to be quite honest, amazing in terms of where the program was when he first joined. Obviously, we've mentioned it before. The word Kelvin liked to use was apathy with the program. And at this point, they're about to get set, whether it's a year removed when they join the Big 12. Obviously, of course, Houston is aiming for 2023, but they're really positioned to, I know when you think of Houston, you don't think of blue blood. They might be positioned for long-term success, which is the key right there, especially for any program that's a sign of a good coach, long-term success. And I think Kelvin Sampson has been able to do that. What say you, Chris?
Agreed, Andy. Coach Sampson and the staff have built this team with the foundation, with the program, brick by brick, to maintain long-term success. And star-wise, next year's team will be more talented. It remains to be seen if they will be as successful, if they will have the chemistry. One thing, the culture won't change. It'll be up to the incoming players to adjust to the culture as soon as possible. Jarris Walker, I think, will get here around May or June. Emmanuel Sharp is already here. So our man Terrence Arsenault is right down I-10. He'll be here soon as well to learn the culture quickly. And then the transfer news will come in as well. So talent-wise, next year team will be talented. I'm not going to get into it, and I don't expect this team, nor should any fan really expect the team to go undefeated. That's hard to do. Luck is involved in that. Injuries is part of that. Matchups is part of all of that. But this team will be in the tournament again next year, barring major injuries to a lot of players. So that right there is establishing how this program has been built. Next year's team, every team that Coach Sampson has now at U of H is expected to be in the NCAA tournament. It's just a question of how far they advance. One of these years, they're going to have a great chance to get 6 wins. 6 wins means a national championship. Next year's team will have more talent. We'll see if they have all the pieces, inside, outside. They do have another long run in the tournament next year. And I'm kind of curious to see how many fans will be late arriving to games next year, guys. You know, will we have them arrive 15 minutes before tip-off rather than 15 minutes after tip-off? Because Houston Cougars men's basketball is the hot ticket in H-Town.
And on that note, Chris, we are about to wrap things up. So we appreciate you, of course, for hopping on. As always, Justin, we're going to toss it over to you to some respect. We appreciate you being able to hop on. But most importantly, we appreciate all the viewers for all this season. I know certainly not an excited crowd in terms of Houston going to back-to-back Final Fours, but certainly getting to the Elite Eight, getting to this point, and just at the end of the day, being multiple 3-4 shots away from advancing to the Final Four. That's really how close this team was from doing something that hadn't been done in school history only once, going back to the '80s. And those 5-time Jamma teams, that's certainly a testament to what, like we've said multiple times, what Kelvin Sampson has been able to build. But on that note, we'll toss it over to Justin Barbosa. Once again, thank you for joining us. Where can people find you on the internet, sir?
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. As I'm Justin Barbosa, you can find me on Twitter at jbarbosapxp. As I'm a play-by-play announcer for high school sports around the Houston area. Also been doing play-by-play for Prairie View A&M for basketball and baseball. And also a proud and also a sad Houston alum tonight, but proud of this team, and go Coogs.
Chris, sir, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter right there. You see at VHR Review. Also, of course, HoustonRoundBallReview.com, the website, Houston Roundball Review on YouTube, where you can catch this show. Going forward, I'm going to have the football post-game shows on the channel as well. I'm branching out at the channel. Houston Roundball Review also on Instagram. So thank you very much, Andy, for making this happen. Thank you for the location for where you guys, the short notice to get it done. So bigger and brighter things are ahead for this Let's Rage Coogs going forward. And also for people tuning in, Andy and I have some other things worked out in the pipeline for you as well for content on another outlet. So let's keeping up with us, following us on Twitter as well. So guys, this is a blast. Season did not end the way we wanted it to, but brighter days are ahead for the Houston Cougars men's basketball program.
And on that note, once again, we'd like to thank all the viewers. Aqib, thank you for joining us here on this live location. And thank you once again. Clint, the owner of location, is sitting just off screen. We appreciate, once again, the Ice House, the East Ice House. I'm butchering the restaurant name, but for allowing us to use this space in San Antonio. This is thrown throw away from the Alamo Dome, 10 minutes away from AT&T Center. Thank you all for joining us, and we will be back. Let's Rage Coogs will take a break. We'll be back for the football season starting in September, and that's going to be big for the program coming off the heels of a 12-2 season. Obviously, of course, follow me on Twitter. Aqib, I'll toss it over to you because I haven't let you plug, sir. So where can people find you?
Yeah, it's you can find me on Instagram and Twitter for the final time of the season at AQIBMGAZI. On Instagram and Twitter, I cover UFC, cover MMA, and then of course Houston sports and with the Rockets and also with the Houston Cougars.
And on that note, people can find me on Twitter at @Ayanez_5. We'll see you for football season, but be sure to follow us. Our personal Twitters, like Chris Gardner said, he has some exciting teasers that is going to be coming for the UH in terms of transfers. Even though it's the off season, it's never really the off season. There's always news breaking. I'm sure there's going to be something that pops up. To be quite frank, within the next few days or weeks, it always seems like news is popping up with programs. But we will be back for the football season. We thank you for all that grew. Each show saw an improvement in viewers and saw growth. I think we capped off at over 1,200 views just on Twitter alone. And then I know Chris with YouTube. I think the last time I checked, it was consistently getting over. I want to say 400, our previous show that got. So we had that same, like we said, short notice. We started after the American Athletic Conference, or during the American Athletic Conference tournament. So it was a good run. We'll be back for football season. We thank you all that joined us. And